Baron Akularis, also known as the Prophet, was an imperial sorcerer, moth priest, and the Emperor of Cyrodiil. He is also the founding member of the Five Companions. Varen's rule went mostly without problems, but he was constantly worrying about him becoming an illegitimate ruler as he was not Dragonborn. Believing that only a Dragonborn can rightfully take the Ruby Throne, in the Second Era 577th year, he formed the Five Companions to find the Amulet of Kings after the Altmer sorcerer Mannimarco convinced him that he knew a ritual that would allow Varen to become Dragonborn. After hearing of this, he set out on a 2-year quest to find the amulet with his 5 companions. Varen himself, the half-giant warrior Lyris Titanborn, the sorcerer Mannimarco, Sai Sahan, a Redguard Blade Master, and the captain of his personal Dragon Guard, the Elder Chancellor Abner Tharn. The 5 were able to recover the amulet and begin the ritual in the Second Era 579th year. They gathered at the Temple of the One in the Imperial City and began to perform the ritual. While Thorn held the amulet, Varen asked Akatosh to rightfully grant his claim as Emperor by making him a Dragonborn. At that moment, Mannimarco immobilized everyone present and revealed his true intentions. He was an agent of Molag Bal, and the ritual did not reignite the Dragonfires, but in fact did the exact opposite, destroying the ancient barrier, shielding Mundus from the forces of oblivion, and thus allowing Molag Bal to begin the Plane Meld, a forceful attempt to drag Nirn out of Mundus and into his own realm of Cold Harbor. This event was known as the Soul Burst, and it shook every corner of Tamriel. Subsequently, Lyris was captured and brought into Cold Harbor. Sai Sahan fled with the amulet and managed to hide it in Sancre Tor, but before also being captured later on, Mannimarco summoned his worm cult and turned the Temple of the One into a sacrificial ground where dozens of souls were harvested and brought to Cold Harbor, and Abner joined him in order to gain his trust and spy on him. Varen, however, disappeared. The Imperial throne sits empty. The Dragonfire is cold, unlit, and from every corner darkness grows. Now, ancient enemies band together, unlikely alliances are forged, old ambitions rekindled, and as enemies rise faster than allies, salvation cannot come from one hero alone, but from many. Our supplies dwindle, our trade routes are shut down, our people suffer. Why? Because a pretender sits upon the ruby throne. Let us take up arms. Let the fields of Cyrodiil run red with the blood of our fallen enemies, but let us spare the lives of a few so that they may return to their homelands to tell their fellows the fate they met at the hands of the Daggerfall Covenant. One land, one emperor. Who among you will stand with me? The Daggerfall Covenant was an alliance of the kingdoms of High Rock, Sentinel, and Orsinium during the Second Era. It was led by High King Emeric of Cumberland, the King of Wayrest. The main reason the Daggerfall Covenant was established in the Second Era 567th year was to end the poverty and suffering throughout the kingdoms of High Rock and Hammerfell, caused by dwindling trade routes, which in turn was caused by the many wars happening throughout the land, such as King Rancer's War. This could not be done as long as an enemy was sitting on the Ruby Throne. The merchant king of Wayrest, Emeric, took action and united the previously warring races of Breton, Redguard, and Orc. He earned the trust of the kings of High Rock, earned the alliance with the Redguards by a diplomatic marriage with Maria of Sentinel, and finally made a war treaty with the Orcs. The Redguards, a disciplined and martial people, begrudgingly agreed to join the Orcs thanks to the cunning Bretons, whose political and economic savvy make victory for the Covenant seem possible. Despite internal struggles, the Covenant believes that only it can provide strong leadership and plan for prosperity the Emperor needs to survive. Much like the Ebonheart Pact, the Daggerfall Covenant united races that were commonly known as Old Enemies, the Bretons, Orcs, and Redguards. Due to the events in both Cyrodiil and High Rock itself, trade routes that served as the region's main source of income were disrupted. This caused much poverty and suffering, and ultimately forced the people of the Iliac Bay and the surrounding areas to unite under one banner. The Daggerfall Covenant stretched over the provinces of High Rock, Hammerfell, the city-state of Orsinium, and the Colovian Highlands in Cyrodiil. Its capital is the city of Wayrest, which is built on 2 shores. The faction is led by High King Emeric. The Covenant claimed that the Riemann Empire lived on in its members, and they remained true to the primacy of trade, principles of freedom, and the worship of the 8 divines, which was followed in much of the Daggerfall Covenant. The Orcish and Breton craftsmanship made the Alliance an economic powerhouse, with the military strength of the Redguards and the Orcs making it a force to be reckoned with. The rulers of the Covenant longed to return to an empire of Tamriel, which the economic prosperity, law, and justice that it would bring. The Covenant believed that the only way to make sure the right emperor would sit the throne was to make sure they themselves attended to it. After taking over all of Tamriel, the Covenant aimed to also install a Grand Council, which would include members from all the kingdoms of Tamriel. I have no hatred for the races of man, but they are young. Like all children, they are driven by emotion. They lack the wisdom that comes with age. I would sooner place an Altmer infant on the ruby throne than surrender Tamriel to the capricious whims. The Altmer, the Bosmer, and the Khajiit share the common traits of intelligence, patience, and reason. We do not seek riches or plunder. Domination is not our goal, nor is the acclamation of power for its own sake. Today we make a stand. Today we take back the ruby throne, which is ours by ancient right, and the blessings of the divines. Stand with us. The Altmer Dominion. Aldmeri Dominion was formed sometime between the Second Era of 580 year and the Second Era of 582nd year by the Altmer. It can also be referred to as the brainchild of Queen Irene. They were afraid of the disaster that the younger races could bring to Nirn. After the news of the imperial city being taken over by Molag Bal worshippers had reached Somerset Isle, the Altmer reached out to their old allies, neighboring races Bosmer and Khajiit. As they had done many times before, they swore that with the combined forces of the three races, they shall prevent the disaster that was to come. Convinced that the younger, less sophisticated races have dominated Tamriel too long, the Dominion seeks to right the course of history. The cultured and typically reclusive Altmer have emerged from their ancestral home of the Somerset Isles, alongside the Bosmer of Valenwood and crafty Khajiit of elsewhere, to usher in a new era of peace and law. The Dominion was formed in an attempt to take control of the imperial city and restore elven rule to Tamriel. It is said that the three allied races were the most intelligent, patient, and rational in all of Tamriel. Members of the Aldmeri Dominion believe that the short-lived and young races of men are unfit to rule, and that this rule is meant by the divines to be filled by the Aldmeri Dominion itself. The Aldmeri Dominion stretches over the provinces of the Somerset Isles, Valenwood, and elsewhere. Its capital is Eldenroot, hidden deep within the forests of the Bosmer Valenwood, and is led by Queen Irene. The Aldmeri Dominion, led by Queen Irene, and governed by the Thalmor, a collection of Altmeri Canreaves, Bosmeri Tree Thanes, and Khajiit chieftains. The Thalmor was devised by Irene as a means of creating equal representation for the Aldmeri Dominion's three races. Irene inherited the throne when the previous Altmer ruler, her father, King Hildolith, passed away. She was, no doubt, one of the youngest leaders in the history of Myr. She was a mere 25 years old when she became queen. Despite her youth, Queen Irene was said to have virtues rare among her kind. She was an honorable, intelligent, and stubborn leader. Before she took the role of a queen, she was said to have been an adventurer and had set foot in every province of Tamriel. King Eredin is the political leader of the Bosmer people. He, along with the Sylvanar and the Green Lady, assists Queen Irene in ruling Valenwood for the Dominion. Likewise, the Main is the ruler of elsewhere and rules it in the name of the Dominion. Before Ysgramor led the Nord people south, our ancestors flourished in the frozen continent of Atmora, and to this day our people prefer the bitter climates of northern Tamriel. The Dark Elves abide in Morrowind, a harsh land of ashfall and perpetual earthquakes. The Argonians endure the treacherous and impenetrable depths of Blackmarsh. The alliance between our races was born in dark times when Nord, Dudmer, and free Argonians fought as one to repel the invasion of the Akularis slave masters. Our greatest strength is the adversity we have overcome. Our resolve is glacial, our might is forged in fire, and our courage cultivated by the beasts of the jungle. We are Ebonheart, we are as one, and by this our victory is assured. The Ebonheart Pact is a politically fragile yet powerful military alliance between Skyrim, Morrowind, and Blackmarsh. It was formed in the Second Era 572nd year amidst the turmoil of the Second Akaviri invasion. Tensions run deep between these unlikely allies, forced to stand together against the threat of Molag Bal and incursions from enemy alliances. The dour, magical-gifted Dunmer of Morrowind have joined the reptilian Argonians, former slaves from mysterious Blackmarsh, and boisterous Nords of Skyrim in a bid for sovereignty. Founded in the midst of the Akaviri invasion of the Second Era 572nd year, the territory of the Ebonheart Pact stretched over the provinces of Skyrim, Morrowind, and Blackmarsh at the height of its power. Its capital is the city of Mournhold, located on the mainland of Morrowind, the homeland of the Dunmer, though the faction is led by a Nord nobleman known as Joran, the Skulled King. one of the most politically unstable, but militaristically among the most powerful alliances of Tamrielic history. The three cultures that comprised the Ebonheart Pact shared a great distrust for each other, only holding allegiance to one another because of a common desire to defeat the Emperor and preserve their homeland's independence. After the sack of Windhelm and the death of Skyrim's royal family, the Akaviri began their march south towards the city of Riften. In grief and desperation, Jorin, now the High King, approached the Greybeards for guidance. The Greybeards answered his plea and called upon Wulfharth, the Ash King from Sovngarde, for assistance. Inspired by Wulfharth, Jorin's army of Nord warriors stood ready to confront the Akaviri invaders on their own terms. Recognized the regrouped Nords as the primary threat to their expedition in Tamriel, the Akaviri opt to avoid a second confrontation and march directly for Morrowind, gambling the Nords would ignore them once they moved beyond Skyrim's borders. Jorin's men pursued the Akaviri across the Velothi Mountains and forcibly pushed them into Morrowind. The Akaviri army was met by a Dunmer army led by the tribune Amalexia outside Ebonheart in the Stone Falls region. As the invaders engaged the Dunmer army, the Nords fell upon the Akaviri from the rear, but the invaders still outnumbered their foes. Suddenly, an Argonian army arrived from the south, led by Hitamine, a female Argonian, who had been shown the battle in a dream weeks before by the Hist, and gathered an army to meet them. Surrounded on three sides, the Akaviri were forced north into the sea. There they either fell in combat or drowned as they fled into the water. This victory over the Akaviri forces played a crucial role in the later creation of the Ebonheart Pact. Following the Akaviri defeat, the Nords, Dunmer, and Argonians formed the Great Moot. These three cultures henceforth struck as a single army, ultimately repelling the entire invasion of the Akaviri slave masters. In the Second Era, 579th year, the Ebonheart Pact controls the largest area of Tamriel's landmass out of the three alliances. Despite the godlike power of the Dunmeri Tribunal, the faction was led by the High King of Skyrim. However, he did not rule absolutely. All governing decisions had to be brought up and discussed in the Great Moot to be approved. When the Great Moot assembled at Skuldalfin after Pact forces defeated Fildgor Orkthane's army, each member presented an object of power before beginning the meeting. Jorin Skull King presented the Crown of Freydis. Yvith Normaril presented the Judgment of Veloth, and Eyes of Steel presented the Nemec Egg. Jorin the Skull King was said to be humorous and inspiring, but also harbored an iron will. Despite the fact that the seat of power in Skyrim was the city of Windhelm, Jorin spent most of the time in Mournhold, where the rest of the Moot was represented.